A few times recently, I've found myself thinking, I can't believe this is my life. I've been overcome with gratitude and a sense of awe about some of the things I'm experiencing. And here's the thing, I genuinely believe that feeling can be a reality for you too. You can build a life that you love living. So today, I want to share my unique recipe, my perspective on creating a life that you love, or as I call it, a meaningful life, and provide some tactical tips and ideas that you might take along the way, along the path of this journey of making this a reality for yourself. Welcome to A Level Deeper. Well, by this point of the episode, you've likely realized that I'm not going to be introducing a guest. I'm not going to be introducing a conversation that I've had with someone. I'm going to be sharing something with you that I have recorded by myself, a solo episode. In acknowledging that, I'll also acknowledge the fact that I've been sitting here staring at my mic for probably the last 15 minutes, trying to figure out what exactly I'm doing, what I'm going to share, why I'm doing this, why do I think my thoughts and ideas are more important, or people should be listening to me, and who am I to give some kind of advice. And there's been a lot of internal dialogue around sharing some of my own thoughts, ideas, perspectives, and story. And here I am nonetheless. So these types of solo episodes are going to be a new format, an ongoing format of this show, and I have two intentions for doing them. Number one is that I guess I have a belief at the end of the day that belittling our own ideas and thoughts and perspectives, playing small because we don't look at ourselves as an expert, or we don't look at ourselves as someone people should listen to, I think it does ourselves a disservice, and it can do a disservice to others, because what if we all had something to share? What if we all had a perspective that other people might gain from? I think in many ways, I've used this show to sort of hide behind the ideas and stories and perspectives of my guests. And not that their ideas and stories and perspectives aren't incredibly valuable, because I think that they are. I enjoy sitting down with someone, often virtually, and hearing why they think the way that they think and what their different life experiences have taught them about this life journey. By hearing that, I think I can take a lot from some of their stories, perspective, and experience. And then when I apply the mirror back to myself, it's like, I'm like, oh, well, no, I mean, not me. I don't have anything useful to share. I don't have anything that would be valuable for people to hear me talk about. And I think that's just a way of playing small. I think it's a way of trying to, in some way, hide, because there is a part of me that wants to share. There is a part of me that feels like I've had enough instances where people will make comments about something I'm doing or something that I'm creating or a lifestyle, or people will say, I'm jealous of this, I've always wanted to start a podcast, I've always wanted to travel. And so I guess it's just this experience of being like, well, I mean, I guess I am doing those things. And oftentimes people are like, well, how did you go about doing that? And so maybe I do have perspective to share. So my intention is to share my story and some of my experiences and my perspective. Not in the form of advice, not in the form of you need to do this or you should do this. I'm just sharing what has led to me creating a really meaningful life, and a life that I am very proud of at this point in time, in the hopes that you might be able to take some of my stories, some of my perspective, maybe apply some of it, maybe apply a bit of it in unique ways. Hopefully it just helps in some way. And I guess the second reason is I want to document some of these things for myself. I want to reflect on them. And in this process of recording an episode by myself, putting myself in front of the mic, I'm spending time to reflect on the things that I want to share, and I'm actually sharing them. I'm verbalizing them. And for me, that's been an important part of my growth, is being able to take these things that are happening inside my head and get them out into the world. I need to actually speak them into existence, and that has a more profound impact on me than letting them fester in my brain all the time. All right, so those are my intentions for these episodes, and I guess that felt important to me to say first, just to set expectations. Now, in this show, I want to talk about how to build a life you actually love. And the subtitle to this is from my perspective and my experience. Frankly, I've got to tell you, I really love my life right now. I legitimately enjoy it. I often have to pinch myself. I will often say to Eileen, I am really grateful for this life that we have created together. And there are so many moments where I have to just stop and I'm like, wow, I really cannot believe that I am living this life right now. As I was preparing for this episode, I was thinking about one of the sort of markers that to me indicates I am living a meaningful life, one that is meaningful to me, uniquely me, is the idea that I often have a lot of people say, I could never live the way that you do. Oh, I could never do that. That makes me feel like I'm on the right track. To be more specific, if you're not familiar with me or the life that I'm currently living, I live full-time in a camper van. It's me, my wife, and my 50-pound Australian Shepherd named Sadie, and the three of us travel around full-time. We have been living in this van for the better part of 2 years, traveling the country, and we have been to 49 states. At the moment, I am recording this episode from really a breathtaking view in Alaska. I am about an hour outside of Anchorage. I'm sitting in this valley. I've got mountains almost 360 degrees around me. There's lakes nearby. I can't even see a building anywhere in sight. I'm immersed in nature, and I'm recording this podcast. I guess I could go on sharing more things about my life, but this really isn't meant to be about me and exactly what I'm doing. I guess it's meant to be about the idea that I feel like I am living a life that I legitimately love, and I believe that that is possible for all of us. And so if you are listening to this in this moment, my hope for you is the same thing. My hope for you is that by the end of this episode, we can have made some form of progress toward understanding and defining what that meaningful life looks like for you and how you might go about maybe taking a step toward building a life that you love, building a life that you love a little bit more, building a life that you enjoy a little bit more, building a life that you bring and derive a little bit more meaning from. So that's our goal for this episode. Now, I've got to tell you that this place where I feel like I have built a life that I'm proud of, a life that brings me a lot of meaning, is not a place that I have always been. I have not always viewed my life the way that I do now. I have by no means had a bad life. I recognize that my life comes with a lot of privilege, both with the way in which I was born, the family I was born into, the economic situation I was born into, the community I was born into. There are a lot of elements of my life that come with privilege, and I recognize that. And with all that said, I can reflect on times when I haven't been able to say, I feel like I'm really living a meaningful life to me. There have been times where I haven't felt like I'm living in a way that aligns with the things that I value the most, the things that I uniquely want in my life. And the way I got to that place was trying to fit myself into a box, trying to live a life that I thought that I should, trying to live a life that I felt like other people were going to celebrate me for and lived up to some of the expectations that I felt like other people had for me or on me, whether they were directly spoken, whether they were implied, whether I was just making them up or assuming they existed. There's periods in my life where I was living in a way that I thought was either going to make me happy or was going to make other people happy or proud of me in the things that I was doing. And for my experiences hosting these conversations on this podcast, that feels like a familiar place that a lot of us can sympathize with. So whether you've experienced that before, whether you're at that place right now where you can recognize there's something off, there's something that feels like your life isn't the one that you maybe want to be living, like there's some additional meaning you could be getting out of your life, like there are things that you value that you're not investing your time or your energy or your resources into, something just feels off. That was sort of the first sign for me that maybe I need to make some changes and reevaluate the way that I'm approaching my life because something felt off. As I said, I was living what felt like a lot of people would say is a good life. I had a good job. I was out of college. I was checking a lot of the boxes that society placed importance on. And in a way, I think that felt good. It felt like people looked at the things that I was doing and said, hey, that's great. Good for Chad. He's really on a good path here. And despite all that, I was just feeling this friction. I was feeling like something was missing. I was feeling like I wasn't living in a way that was authentic and meaningful to me and the things that I desired. And it really wasn't until I made a radical shift in my life that I started to pursue the things that were meaningful to me. I made a radical shift and I started to get more clear on what I wanted my life to look like, the things that I valued and the things that were going to be important to me as I look back on my life. Ultimately, it was the things that I believed were going to make my life meaningful. And I had to get clear on those things. As I look back, I can identify two major catalysts that I would say moved me from living a life that was not unique to me, not uniquely meaningful to me, into living a life that I love and a life that is uniquely meaningful to me. The first thing was starting a therapy journey. Therapy was something that I really wasn't that familiar with. My understanding of therapy was that it was for people who were in some sort of negative mental space and place, people who needed help, people who were struggling with certain things that were more than I was struggling with in my own life. And as I came to learn more about it, I think I became more open to it. And then it wasn't until I had a close friend who started their own therapy journey. And I was really intrigued by it, inspired by it. They were someone that I didn't necessarily look at and say, oh, they fit this idea of who needs therapy. They're going through certain things in their life. They've been through certain trauma or are dealing with mental illness. That wasn't this person's case. And as I talked to this close friend of mine, they were sharing some of the reasons for wanting to pursue therapy, to understand themselves a little bit deeper and understand some of the cycles that they were going through and some of the repeat patterns in their life in hopes to do something about it and change something. And I guess that really stood out to me. That felt meaningful to me as I looked at my life and I noticed some of these patterns. I noticed this friction that I was feeling, and I felt like, you know what? I want to do something about that. So therapy seemed like a logical choice. In my personal process with therapy, and the thing that I found to be really helpful was that my therapy experience provided a platform for me to share, as I'm doing now, to vocalize some of the things, to reflect on my life, to think about the things that I was experiencing, the things that I was thinking, and to pause a little bit and try to derive some meaning from them. What do those things mean? What was I taking away from them? What was I learning that I could then apply to my life? And I think the second part of it that was really valuable for me was my therapy experience presented me with new questions. Questions like, what's on your mind? What are your values? What do you value in life? What do you value out of your work? What do you want your relationship to look like? Some of these questions were ones that some of these questions I'd never been asked before. And maybe I'd thought about them, but I'd never really taken the time to reflect and verbalize and sort of document my answers. So from my experience, if you are in a place where you want to create a more meaningful life that is unique to you, the first thing that I would do is get clear on what you value. What are the things that mean the most to you in your life? What are the things that when you're 80, 90, 100 years old, and you're looking back on your life, what are the things that you want to say that you prioritized? What are the things that when you do these things in your life, they make you feel good? Not in like a superficial way, but in a deep sense of peace and joy and happiness way. The things that create these moments of wonder and awe in your life. What are those things for you? As I thought about the things that I value, there was a list of 5 that really came to mind for me. Number 1 was freedom. Number 2 was experiences. Number 3 were memories. Number 4 was integrity. And number 5 was connection. Those were 5 things that felt really important to me. They felt like things that I wanted to have as part of my life. Not in the future, not one day. I wanted to have them now, and I wanted to have them consistently for the rest of my life. Those were the things that when I look at my life, when I look at what I felt like was going to bring me meaning, those are the main things. And I'll tell you, it's amazing when you take a moment to define the things that you value in life. Now you have the opportunity to sort of compare to the life that you're living now and evaluate, how are you doing on each of those things? Are you living a life that's aligned to the things that you've just written down that you say that you value? You say you value them. Do your actions show that? When I looked at the life that I was living, it was one that was, I'm in a corporate job. I was following a sort of familiar path that I felt like was prescribed for me. It was the path that I felt like people wanted me to go down. And as I looked at that list, freedom, experiences, memories, integrity, connections, it's not like I wasn't fulfilling any of them, but especially on the top end, freedom, experiences, and memories, I felt like I was leaving a lot on the table. And so this process of writing down my values, of speaking my values, of becoming clear on them, and then starting to reflect on how was I acting in accordance with those values was this first step in the process. Okay, so I mentioned that there were two major catalysts for me in this process of making a radical shift in my life and starting to pursue the things that were the most meaningful to me so I could build a life that I actually love. The second major catalyst was the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic that started in 2020. Now, I know that might not be super relatable or helpful, because if my suggestion here is that, well, we just need a nice global pandemic to come around and then you can pursue a meaningful life, well, that's not really the most helpful. What the pandemic did is it created a new sense of urgency. It was a major event that allowed me to make an operating system update and take a look at the role that my work played in my life, the role that my living situation played in my life. And it kind of removed me from some of those things so I could really think about, well, what do I want those things to look like? If I'm saying I value these things that I've listed before, is where I live and what I do for work contributing to me reaching those values? Is it demonstrating those values on a daily basis? I think sometimes the hardest part is when we have the awareness that maybe there's a gap between what we say we value and the ways in which we're acting. Well, what do we do with that information? How do we actually make change in our life? And when is the right time to make those changes so that we live a life that is meaningful, that is aligned to our values? To me, the introduction of the pandemic was a sign. What I take from that is that there is really no good time. There's typically not an ideal time to pursue your dreams, to pursue what it is that makes your life meaningful, to align to your values and to the vision that you have for life. There is likely not going to be a perfectly ideal time for that to start happening. So either you can sit around and wait for another global pandemic to happen in life, or you can make a decision now. You can make a decision to change. You can make a decision in this moment to rewrite your operating system and make an update. Update it with the things that you value. Update it with things that are important to you in your life, and have those be the new things that you use to align your life to. If you're looking for some form of permission to make a radical change in your life, I give you permission. You can let whoever know that it was me, it was Chad, it was on a Level Deeper podcast. I gave you permission to make a radical change in your life because I think that that is one of the most meaningful things that you can do. And by the way, it doesn't have to be some radical change. It doesn't have to be a big shift, a huge identity shift. Maybe you realize that there's small things that you could do to align more to your values. Great. You still have to make the mental shift and say, as of now, as of today, I am now deciding that I am going to act more in accordance with my values. But look, there likely is not going to be a convenient time to do this. I continue to learn that pursuing the things that are unique and meaningful to me are incredibly inconvenient and incredibly worth it. I mean, just to give you an idea, when I started making some of these changes in my own life and deciding that I wanted to act more in alignment with these things that I say I valued, that meant things like leaving a full-time job, starting a business, deciding to buy a van and build it out from scratch with no prior experience, living in that van, starting to travel full-time, and continuing to build a business of my own and build a business with Eileen and create this really unique life that fit into the things that we thought were important. And so here I am, this version of myself. I recently turned 30 years old. I live in this van full time. I don't have another home. I don't have a house somewhere. I don't have an apartment or something that I can go back to. This is my home. This is it. I've been to 49 states. I'm in Alaska in this moment. This is my third time in Alaska in my life. I'm originally from Michigan. This last weekend, I went hiking on a glacier. A couple months ago, I was skydiving, and then I rented ATVs in Utah, and I'm creating all of these memories because I've chose to. Now, as I'm hearing myself even say this in my own headphones, two things come to mind. Number one, I again realize and recognize that in some ways, I have more access to make some of these choices and decisions in my life. There is an element of privilege that I do believe allows me a little bit more ease to make some of these decisions, that makes it a little bit easier for me. And I recognize that. I do believe that everyone can choose to live in a more meaningful way and in a way that aligns to their values, no matter what their situation might be. Again, that might not look like a drastic shift, a drastic change. It could look like small things, small ways of creating more meaning in your everyday life. The second thing I want to point out is that this road and this journey that I have been on has by no means been easy all of the time. In fact, not even easy most of the time. I mean, can you imagine the amount of barriers we've had to overcome as we're trying to build this van and figure out where to live as we're doing that? And there's been so many people, our parents and our families and strangers and local people in our town that have helped us through this process. Building businesses is incredibly difficult, and there's been times where we've had a lot of success and times where we've had almost little to none at all. This journey has resulted in times where I've made lots of money and times where I've made no money for periods in my life. And I guess at the end of the day, despite all of those things, I've still had this sense and this feeling that the life that I've created is meaningful. It is still meaningful to me because it's still living in accordance with the things that I value. So my friend, my ultimate message to you today is that I do not believe that you live a meaningful life on accident. I believe that living a meaningful life is a very intentional act. It requires us to reflect, to think, to define the things that we value in life, and then make intentional decisions to pursue those things. So I encourage you as an exercise with me right now to think about taking inventory of your life. What do you value most in life? Do you have a clear answer to that? Do you have a defined answer? I listed 5 things earlier. Can you list 5 things of your own that you value most in life? And if in this moment you can't, that is perfectly okay. I encourage you to write them down. Think about them, reflect on them, and document them for yourself. If nothing else, for yourself. Because then if they're documented, you can take an honest look at if the way that you are leading your life in this moment and the actions that you are taking day to day are aligned to the things that you say you value. Emphasis on the things that you say you value, not that society values or other people around you value, the things that you uniquely value. Are you living in a way that speaks and reflects to the fact that you value these things? And if that answer is yes, that is fantastic. That is my hope for you. That is my hope for everyone, is that whatever you do in life, you will make life meaningful. That's my hope. So if this answer to this question is a yes, then at least you've gone through the exercise of affirming that you are still on the right track, which I think is an important exercise to evaluate on a very consistent basis. And if the answer is no, if you don't feel like you are living in a way that is reflecting these values and the things that you have defined, then what operating system update do you need to make in your life in order to bring about a change of some sort? It could be a small change. A change of some sort in order to align your life a little bit more closely to the things that you value. And I, podcast host sitting in a van somewhere in Alaska, version of Chad, give you permission to make that operating system update right now. Right now, you can decide to act in a small way more aligned to the things that you value. And who knows, maybe if you take a small step and see how that feels, see if it builds more meaning and more fulfillment into your life, maybe that will inspire another step, maybe a larger step, maybe another small step. My hope is that together in going through these sorts of exercises, we can continue to reflect on our lives and make sure that it is meaningful. Make sure that we're not getting off track or getting lost in what other people might value and focusing instead on the things that we value. And my ultimate hope is that no matter what we do, no matter what you decide, no matter what I decide, we are living a life that is meaningful to us. And I guess that to me feels important. And if you're listening to this point, then I guess it probably does for you as well. And so I'm glad that we are on this journey together. Well, we made it through. I'm probably now going to go start editing this episode, and I'm going to cringe 1,000 times, and every cell in my body is going to not want to share this, and I'm going to. So the fact that you're listening to this, I guess, is a testament that I made it through, and I shared something that felt meaningful and important to me, and I'm curious what you thought. Was there anything that I shared today that maybe you resonated with? Not that it was some profound teaching, but was there something that made you just think a little bit differently, maybe about your life, or just revisit some of the things in your life for the first time in a while? I'd love to hear from you. You can join in the conversation at A Level Deeper on Instagram, or send me an email directly, aleveldeeperpod@gmail.com. Interacting with you and being able to just share stories and reflect on things is part of what makes this process meaningful for me. One of my values is connection. And so getting to connect with you in a deeper way is really important to me and something that I hope to do more of. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening, and back with some more episodes for you next week. See you then.